All right.
Welcome to Diabolicast, the show where we talk about movies and various other stuff in the Q&A. John, how are you today?
I'm all right, hanging in there.
Yeah, same here. Especially after I just listened to that Nostalgia Critic Wall parody album. That was a
Is it as long as the actual Wall album?
no. It's thank God. It's only like 40 minutes or something. I didn't. I wouldn't have listened to it if it was like an hour and 20 minutes. No way.
Yeah, because, I've heard the review is longer than normal, but yeah, just, if it was like 2 hours long, that would have just completely scared me off.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't have listened to it. And honestly, I think people are just rating it on radio music like the lowest rating on principle rather than the actual album, but uh I don't blame them because they're not really missing much if you actually do listen to the album.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've heard some pretty bad things about it. I haven't listened to it. Don't want to pollute my Spotify with that stuff. But maybe I'll try a sampling of it sometime if I can find some of the songs on YouTube.
Yeah, just listen to I can't remember the track name, but it's the one after the fourth track, I believe, which is like a parody of the most popular song, Another Brick in the Wall Part 2. And that's probably the only thing you need really.
Jakes. All right.
Yeah, to get a sense of like the album. But we're not here to talk about terrible parody albums. We're here to talk about great movies on this
Yes.
podcast. And we made two suggestions last week. John suggested Oldboy, and I suggested Under the Silver Lake. So, in pure fashion, we are going to start with Oldboy. And John, would you like to introduce the movie for us?
Sure. Oldboy is a 2003 Korean action thriller hybrid about a guy who's imprisoned for 15 years and he has no idea why, and then he's finally released and he doesn't know why. And so he sets out to find out why. And the movie just kind of goes in some interesting places from there.
Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty good summary of it. Uh, Well, I'd like to know because I know it's a very highly acclaimed movie, and I don't know if I feel the same way as like the consensus does, but I'd love to hear what you thought about it, John.
Um, I I was loving it up until the ending, which we'll get into spoilers later, but I thought up until like the last maybe 10 minutes, I thought it was like a super, I don't want to say enjoyable because there were parts of this that were absolutely hard to sit through and watch, but it was a
Yeah,
really just engrossing movie that really like just sink it sinks its teeth into you early and then it just got under my skin, and it was just a really interesting thriller that was really unpredictable, like especially towards the end. Not to spoil anything yet, but I didn't know where it was gonna go, and there's just a lot of really interesting ideas, and all the performances were great. The action was insane. It was just a really, really well made movie.
yeah, and even though I might not love it as much as like other people do, I can't help but admire some of the action set pieces, some of the themes and storytelling methods that the film employs, and the performances all around are quite fantastic as well. It's one of the best acted foreign films I've ever seen, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just especially once I watched the YMS video that contrasted this version with the supposedly horrible Spike Lee remake that came out
Oh
10
yeah, I
years
watched a
later.
bit of that too. Yeah, I watched a bit of that. Yeah.
It gave me a greater appreciation for it because of how much it crams into the runtime, that it never lost me. It was so engaging and fun, and well, not fun because but parts of it were very enjoyable, and it was very interesting to see all the threads play out in the way they did.
Yeah, for sure. And watching that video, I was sitting there like, you know what? I might have not been in love with the movie, but in all honesty, comparing it with the remake, this movie is like a masterpiece in comparison. Like what it does right. And it's just like you can't really compare the two because the early 2000s one is clearly the superior film.
Yeah, I actually saw somebody on Letterboxd saying, "Oh, I like this one better." than the
What, the
original.
remake?
The remake, yeah. I was like, what? Like, how? Why? This is
I
like,
mean, it's. I'm not sure if they're just being contrarian for the sake of it, but
yeah, like the original has such better pacing and acting and just plain. It just has energy and passion, which is and colorful cinematography, which is something that the remake sorely lacks, apparently.
yeah, I think I've seen enough footage from the YMS review to like make kind of a judgment on it, and his commentary seemed pretty on point as well.
Yeah, I mean, I sat through the whole thing and like going point by point. He just the way like I feel like it's kind of unfair to just say, "Oh, it's good" when compared to the remake because it's a really good movie in its own right, but like especially when compared to the remake because like they butchered everything that made the original so interesting and unique. Just made it a horrible action thriller with horrible acting.
Yeah, and I think in this one we're reviewing the original. I think there's better justification for certain actions he does. So when he's early in the film, when he's in captivity and he starts masturbating to the TV, it makes more sense and you feel more sympathy for him. In the remake, you kind of it's kind of just for the hell of it, and there's no real subtext or deeper meaning behind it. It's just, oh look, he's doing what he'd usually do in any other situation, just in captivity, and there's no relevance or deepness to it. It's just surface level, you know.
Yeah, and there's like dialogue in the original that's like I suggest you make friends with the TV, and that's what he does to get through it. And it was just like the way that the entire first act of him being imprisoned was constructed is just so well done. It was just you felt confined with him, and you felt his struggle, and the worry that faced him because you don't know what's gonna happen to his family, and you don't know what's going on outside except for what's on the TV, and if you're watching the news, it's not gonna show everything. And once he does find out some stuff about especially about his family, it's tragic. And like it just like from the first 5 minutes, you're like, okay, this guy's kind of a bumbling idiot. He's like a drunk. Um, he's at the police station with his friend, and you know, he's super drunk, and he calls, his um daughter late at night, and he's like, I'm sorry, I'm not here on like your birthday, but I got you a present." And just in those first 5 minutes, it communicates so much about him and his home life and who he is. And then he's imprisoned for 15 years and he never knows why. That's just one of the hardest things you ever have to endure. And like even with all
Yeah.
that time on his hands, he still can't truly pinpoint who actually imprisoned him because, you know, every wrongdoing he did, you know, didn't add up to this thing because, he doesn't remember this. And that's like the saddest part, how something can ruin somebody else's life and yet the perpetrator never even thought about it.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a beautiful thing. And one thing I do really like about this movie is the setup. That's very well done. So much characterization is like communicated in just a span of 20 minutes in the first quarter of this movie, and I really appreciate the compactness of it. I wish the rest of the film kind of followed in that way because in at least from my perspective, it didn't really follow from that really succinct character study. It kind of just when the rest of the plot came to play, it kind of got a bit muddled for me. But yeah, that's me anyway.
See, that's interesting. I don't think it ever got muddled. I felt it got slightly repetitive towards the middle, but I felt like they quickly resolved that with that pretty long flashback scene. Although that is one thing. Like, if you're going to include what happens in this movie, not to get into spoilers in this movie, I feel like you shouldn't make it as exploitative as it is. It did kind of feel graphic for the sake of it, and some of it is very tastefully handled
Mm.
in terms of the violence. Like you never actually, you know, see the guy's tooth being forcefully removed from the mouth, but you know, I don't think that's a spoiler because haven't said any specifics as to like the first perpetrator and the victim, but like that was much more tastefully handled than some of the scenes that like in the flashback.
Yeah, I think that them not showing the teeth pulling out was a smart move because your mind can do the work. You don't necessarily have to see the actual teeth being pulled out. But I didn't realize because I'm usually good with like squeamish stuff like horror and like gore, but this is one of the few times where I was quite squeamish. It was just I don't know, it's just the way it was filmed and executed. It just provoked my mind a lot. And even one of the characters says, "Don't imagine what's going to happen next because that's the wrong thing to do," something along those lines in the film, and I think that's very true in a sense.
Yeah, it's like all of it is just like all of the violence in the movie is like I feel like it's never glorified, and like even in the most graphic moments, it's like it doesn't feel justified. It feels like just trying to get out of a situation whatever way you see fit. And I don't violence for me is never the way to go, but I have a certain degree of sympathy for him being in his situation because after a while you truly feel like you're in his shoes and you're like trying to get out and know what happened. And especially when the main villain, I'm not going to reveal any names yet, is like revealed and he's just playing all coy about it. It's so frustrating. You're there with him in those shoes and you're just so angry, and it's a really good revenge movie.
It perfectly like puts you in the place of the character and makes you feel what the main character's feeling in terms of revenge or cynicism and stuff like that. And there are certain reveals later in the film, and we'll get to spoilers soon, but that make you really feel the hole in the heart that like the character does, and the shock that you see on his face really translates well to the viewer, and I think that was really done well for sure.
Yeah, and like especially the direction of this movie was so, I don't want to say it's unique necessarily because I'm sure there are other movies that have done this before, but it was
Uh,
just it
yeah.
was there were certain touches that made it a lot more unique and enjoyable, and a lot of it was just really well done camera work and everything. Like there's that famous action sequence in the corridor, and that one take is so impressive. And you
Oh
know
yeah.
just the way
Yeah.
he directed all the actors and the way he blocks certain shots is just it's really interesting.
Yeah, it's very satisfying. Like just watching it happening, and the fact that it's one take too is like really impressive. Um, I that would have been hell to block and get right. And I don't know, I just admire that craft. Like regardless of what I think of everything else, like that's the craft that really makes it stick out. And I imagine in the early 2000s this would have been slightly more unique than with our retrospective assessment now, because we've had so much more films that are in the vein of this. But at the time, I imagine this was in the emergence of like similar films happening. So it wasn't the most unique, but it definitely was a bit different for sure.
Yeah, and this is kind of off topic, but it's really interesting to me that Roger Ebert gave this like 4 stars because I was reading like his review of Blue Velvet the other day, and I was like, couldn't all this kind of be applied to Oldboy too? He's like, oh, it's so gratuitous and it's so gross and ugly and sick, and I'm like, that's kind of the point of Blue Velvet, but it's also kind of the point of Oldboy, and he's like 4 out of 4 stars. This is a masterpiece. Go see it. Which like Blue Velvet or dislike Blue Velvet, like Oldboy, dislike Oldboy if you want. Just it feels kind of contrarian.
In my experience with Roger Ebert, I feel like he will criticize something for the same thing he'll praise for another film. I wonder why that is. Maybe it's just execution, or maybe it's just a different film. I have no clue. But um, I could see the violence or gratuitous nature of this film turning someone off. And that's not why I have reservations for it, but I could definitely see that turning someone off from like enjoying it.
Yeah, and especially like the last half hour of the movie goes places that like I did not expect. Like there's a twist in this movie that is like insane, and
Yeah, it's quite. I don't know if I fully understand all the implications or even meaning of it, but I get the general gist of it.
Yeah, it's like, I thought all the teeth pulling and the action scenes were like intense, but like especially
Holy shit.
yeah, stuff goes down in the last half hour. That's absolutely insane. And like that's the thing. Like you can dislike this all you want, but I could not see how anybody would think this is a boring movie. This is one of the most entertaining movies I've ever seen. It's so engrossing.
Yeah, I mean, maybe for me, maybe towards the middle it kind of lost me a bit, but I want to get more into that in spoilers, so I guess we may as well start spoilers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you can't really reveal much about it without kind of spoiling it because it is kind of a twist-centric movie, and that's not something I knew going in. I thought it was just a thriller that was going to be like, oh, he's going to hunt down some henchmen, and then he's going to hunt down the big baddie and kill him, and everything will be done. And that's not what happens at all.
No, far from it. Uh, it's so it kind of left me breathless towards the end because um, so in the middle it's revealed that the person that has been doing this to him, it's because of the reason why he enslaved in put him in captivity was because he may have indirectly spread a rumor about his sister basically, and this this leads to a confrontation in like a hotel in a hotel penthouse, and tongues are cut off, and um, people shoot themselves, and stuff goes down basically. Uh, yeah, it was kind of crazy. Mm.
Yeah, like the thing is, like the best part of this movie for me was finding out that it was not just a revenge story for the main character, but for the main villain too. I thought that was like one of the most ingenious twists ever, and I like
Mm.
it's a really interesting juxtaposition because like I said, I don't necessarily agree with the main character's methods, but I feel like I don't want to say they're justified, but I do kind of sympathize with
Uh,
them. Whereas like
if I mean, if you're trapped in somewhere for 15 years, your mental state just depletes so much, I imagine, and your judgment would be so clouded. So I don't think I would put anything against the main character. Like he'd be quite, that would mentally, like to put it bluntly, fuck you up to a point. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like, I don't want to make it seem like he's like irredeemable, and yeah, the reasons you state are valid, but I don't know. I feel like torture is a little much, but like whatever you need to get the information.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like it juxtaposed it so well with this character who also has these kind of extreme methods, although he is kind of it's kind of vaguely implied that he's not quite there, but he's maybe more sane than the main character, just because he's been living in the current society of Korea that
Yeah.
you know the main character hasn't been, and so he's kind of up to date with everything, and he knows where he is and everything, and the main character is just so lost in the world, and um, it was just like probably one of my favorite twists in a movie, and like the stuff that's revealed is pretty extreme, and the flashback scene where he's spying on him and his sister is I thought it was a little gratuitous, like there were close-ups and everything that I was like,
Yeah, I have
does it
a
does it really need to
yeah,
be in there? But you know,
I have a few issues with that middle flashback scene. Uh, I didn't really like the tone, the color grading of it. I thought it was too washed out. Two, I thought it kind of jarred with the rest of the tone of the film, and I just thought it got really a bit, I don't know, contrived and over the top for my taste. I I don't know, and maybe there could have been another way they could have executed it. I don't know, but it just kind of took me out of the film a bit in that middle portion. And towards the end, it just got more and crazy, and it kind of just. Yeah, I like the themes and like some of the implications it brought up, but I'm not sure about the plotting execution of it was like the best they could have done.
interesting. I kind of get it being like contrived or over the top. The washed out color grading. I get the significance of it, in the movie because it's trying to convey a change, but I still, it doesn't look amazing, but I could live with it. But like, if it's like, I don't really think it's jarring in tone, but I think it's meant to be, at least, because like it is a shift,
Mm,
back to the old days where like they knew everything, and they were in like good spirits instead of this gritty urban lifestyle that they're currently living. Is it jarring? Maybe, but I feel like there was at least some purpose behind it.
yeah, I think that I understand the purpose and the fact I was trying to emit like a more youthful exuberance to it for sure. But at the same time, there are some really quite like really messed up things that are happening. Like the incestuous undertones and stuff like that. Which there is more incestuous undertones to this film, which I wasn't expecting at all. Uh, but ignoring that for a second, I guess it just I don't know if a second viewing would help it more, but the film also got quite a little hard to follow, which I don't know if it was on me or the film, but yeah,
Okay,
I,
what
yeah.
did you watch the sub or the dub?
I watched the sub.
All right, I watched the sub too. I'm like, I watched the first 5 minutes of the dub because the movie just on the DVD just started, and so I was like, oh okay, and then I realized it was subbed, or no, it was dubbed, and the
Yeah.
dubbing was horrible, and so like, all right, I'm exiting to the main menu. I'm just gonna change it to sub, and I did, and it was infinitely better. Um,
Mm.
and there like it was like two radically different tones. Um, but yeah, I I don't know. I don't really think it was hard to follow for me. Um, uh, like there was one scene where I was like, okay, this is kind of weird. Why is he doing this? But after like a little while of thinking about it, I was like, oh, okay, I think I get this.
Yeah, once I went online and just read some plot synopsis, it was a bit more clearer. But when I was watching it, it was a bit. Maybe it's because maybe I missed something. But I don't necessarily blame the movie for that. Maybe it's just me. But it does get a bit abstract towards the end. I
Yeah,
think.
it's an interesting movie. The only part that kind of confused me initially was like when he's like cutting off his tongue and like begging him, but at the end. But I understood it more once I kind of looked into it, and the themes that went into that is really interesting. Um, it's like it's
Was
really.
is it? This is how I interpret it, right? I didn't look anything up about it necessarily, but um, it's basically like kind of like please forgive me type of deal where he's sacrificing one of his own parts of his body, and that's the only way he can really get true forgiveness if he sacrifices something from himself. Because he looks genuinely sorry towards the end. Like he looks like he regrets what he did. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like that's why he did it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's definitely how I see it.
Oh yeah, I think that's what happened. Like, you know, it's like him saying like, "Okay, I won't spread any more rumors. I'll cut off my tongue," which is horribly brutal and gross, and it does cut away, but that makes it all the more like horrifying. Um, but it's like, all right, this is the end. I won't do anything more. Just please don't hurt this woman. And then it just, you know, boom, it hits. I don't remember if it was before or after that scene. I think it was where it's revealed that the main love interest of the movie, which is pretty much my only problem with the movie, um, is his daughter secretly.
Yeah,
Um,
like once they showed that scrapbook, it took me a little while to catch on, but I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, I was like, I wonder, like, like, how he got this. Is he just did he just ask these parents for a scrapbook under the guise of some relatives or something? But no, it was like once it like got to the end of the scrapbook, I was like, oh crap, no, this is this woman that he um had a fun time with earlier in the movie. Um, and yeah, that was like, oh crap, and like it was just it got pretty insane from there.
yeah, I think their relationship. I didn't necessarily think it was bad necessarily. I thought it was just a bit undercooked in some regards. And then when it's revealed, like he's his daughter, it's uh, like not only does it have incestuous overtones to be blunt, but um, I don't I fail to understand why she kind of was interested in him in the first place. Because he'd be quite. I imagine like to her he'd be quite crazy. Like she gets tied up and she gets put through a lot of hell throughout the film. So I don't understand what she sees in him. If she didn't know it was her father, then I don't know what she sees in him really.
Yeah, that was my big issue, other than like the last 10 minutes or so, which I'll get to in a second. But yeah, like I felt like their relationship was just kind of, oh, here's a lady you can that can take you in for a little bit, and then like when she finds out everything, she's remarkably calm about it. She's just like, oh yeah, cool, and then she's
Oh yeah,
like,
that happened.
and then
It's
she's
like this
like,
is
she
yeah.
gets tied up in one scene, and she's just like, yeah, whatever. It was just like, what? This is kind of the movie is kind of over the top in a lot of aspects, and this was kind of just, she was just like going along with it. I thought it was really weird.
Yeah, there's even a scene when she says, "I hate you" or "I'm angry at you" and blah blah, and then she kind of just goes back to normal a few scenes later, and it's like, what happened to that? Like I thought she was gonna like leave him totally or whatever, but that never happened. So um, it was
Yeah,
just it's a bit of a confused character to be honest, and the reveal kind of just confused it even more. But yeah,
yeah. I mean, yeah. I don't really. I don't know. I wasn't huge on her character, but like I feel like another watch might put a lot of things in perspective because of the reveal at the end. Um, and maybe I'll catch some more hints, but yeah, I didn't really see it coming, but it was an interesting twist that kind of it brought more characterization to this person than anything that happened previously in the movie, and
sure.
I thought that was kind of disappointing.
Yeah, and it did provide more. I don't know if it was like the best route they could have taken, but it was an interesting one and it has a lot of implications. And the person he loved is now his daughter, and that would totally like shake your mindset and just throw you for a loop. I imagine. Um, if you found out, your lover was your daughter, like that's a very, very messed up thing to think about. So the implications of that are varied and many for sure. But yeah, it definitely adds another layer to it to me. And some of the themes, as I said before, that the film brings are very thought provoking. And there's another one I haven't discussed yet. But yeah, yeah.
On to the end. I the ending might be my least favorite part of it. Like I thought it was like just it kind of overstayed its welcome a little. I was like, okay, I kind of get what they're
You
doing
mean
here.
you mean
Like,
when he goes to the snow and stuff like that, and
yeah,
that?
yeah. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, well, I don't know. Like I liked the ambiguity of it, but I thought it was just a little, I don't know. It just like nothing really changed. It was like she was still there, and she was like, "Oh, I love you" and everything, and he was like, you don't know if he forgot or not, and I like that
Hmm.
ambiguity, but I don't really think it added anything to the movie. I thought it was just like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It felt kind of
It felt like an afterthought to me. Like it didn't really need to be there. There was so much before that. It just kind of felt like an add-on to an already deep reaching story. If that makes sense.
absolutely. I thought it was like, I don't know. I thought it was just really kind of lazy and inconclusive, and I was like, if they could like just cut away like 5-10 minutes earlier before that scene, it would have left everything in like a really interesting and weird place. Like, where do you go from here? And I guess I get why they did that, is because like maybe the studio would have
Hmm.
wanted sequels and something if they did that, but I don't know. I feel like it was already a pretty conclusive story. Like he found out, why he was imprisoned. Everything was put in perspective, and you know he has to break off this relationship. He doesn't know how to tell this girl. If they actually just said, okay, um, man up and do this instead of just, going to this random place in the snow and forgetting. And I feel like it would have been a lot more emotionally resonant than just, oh, you're gonna forget this. And, just like, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, they could have taken an opportunity to create a really good emotional arc for the character, and that would have definitely nulled my criticism of some of the characterization of the film. But this is a different route, which I get what the point was, but I don't know if it was necessarily like the most satisfying way they could have done it. Yeah, and uh, just kind of off topic, but I do. There's another theme, like how you mentioned. It's kind of a revenge story for the villain too. Uh, I kind of like the theme of how even though it's rumors, they can really affect how um, someone views himself in terms of his sister, in going into the water and stuff like that, and um, that sure his methods of actually dealing and getting revenge are very, they're not good, of course. Putting someone in captivity for 15 years is not called for, but at the same time, raise questions on what we say and how it affects other people, and it's something that I wasn't expecting, but it was a very welcome one, and I really like the themes that came with that. Even if the plotting execution wasn't like the best for me, I can appreciate like what they were intending.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that flashback scene of him, losing his sister into the dam, it was mostly metaphorical to me. Like, I feel like, yes, it probably happened, but I feel like a lot of it was just like her, like, falling into the rumors and, not being able to get back out and just kind of drowning in them. And I thought that was a really interesting way to portray that. And, you know, it, the way it's edited was a little weird. Like, um, it wasn't super clear, but like once it ended, I was like, oh, okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah, no, I kind of felt the same way, and I get why someone would be totally head over heels for it, but I have some hesitations overall, which kind of mixes this experience for me. Like, I wish I could totally love it, but there are just some little things that I can't really ignore. So, yeah.
So what would you say specifically bugs you the most about this movie?
Um, if I had to like sort of like pinpoint the film, I've kind of alluded to it before, but I guess it's like as the film goes on, it gets more distance from really succinct characterization and goes more into over the top like storytelling, which could work, but I felt like it was kind of plotted and executed kind of like a bit poorly in my view, and it kind of just made the experience mixed in that I can't say it's bad because the themes and the scenes themselves, like there's a lot to pull out of them for sure. But at the same time, I have a lot of hesitations because of the direction they're taking the movie tonally, at least to me.
I think that's fair. I don't necessarily agree with you because I feel like the entirety of the movie is fairly succinct and like not like over the top to the point of just silliness because there are pretty grueling scenes in this, but I feel like the entire movie is pretty consistent in tone, and I feel like it's pretty tightly made, even if there are maybe a couple of scenes in the middle that were like, okay, is this really necessary? There were a few scenes that were like, okay, like I do like, the scenes where they're on the computer with his friend and everything, but especially the scene where like the villain shows up and it like pans over to him like sitting right in front of him and he just doesn't realize. There's a nice little bit of social commentary about how absorbed we are into our technology, but that's kind of besides the
Mhm.
point. But like I feel like those scenes didn't really add much to the story. It was just kind of a detour that didn't really add much.
Yeah, and I guess there are some aspects that they put in there, like the technology, but they don't expand on like properly, which could have added a bit more depth to it. But it's not something that strikes me as a big issue. It's just something they could have changed a little bit to make it a bit more, make it a bit better, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, overall, though, like, aside from a couple bits of editing and the character of Mito, I don't think that there's really any problems I have with it. It was just a really well
Hmm.
made movie, and I really enjoyed it. Kind
No,
of.
yeah, I definitely, I definitely appreciate this movie. It's I'd say it's a good movie, but it's just as I mentioned before, some things I hesitate on me giving it a higher rating. So yeah.
So what would you give it?
Uh, well, on initial viewing, I gave it a 5 out of 10. 'Cause
Ugh.
yeah, that's pretty low. But I would have to rewatch it or maybe watch more of the YMS video. But I might give it a 6 or maybe a 7 if I'm feeling really generous. But I'll keep it a 5 for now. But I could definitely see it changing to 6 or higher in the future.
Dang, if I was awfully low, I mean, I can understand not liking it, but I don't know. I feel
Uh,
like,
yeah.
like, I don't know, I feel like the way you're talking about it was like, is it really, does it really equate to like a 5 out of 10? Uh,
Well, I guess there are other elements under the surface like that contributed to my score. Like when I initially finished it, that may want to give it a 5, but it's definitely really close to a 6. Or um, I would, I do think I usually don't give movies like that low that are this well made, but I don't know. I guess like when I was finished it, I felt a certain way, but I have to rewatch it to like because I think it'd be better on rewatch for sure. I know that's kind of how I feel about Synecdoche, New York. Like you gave it really low score, and I don't really see how it is, but yeah.
all right. I think I would give it a 9 at this point. I think it was just a really well-made movie, even with some of my I can't talk, flaws, it was like, it was like a really engrossing movie that was like dark, but not to the point where I was like, I didn't never want to go down that path again. I thought it was, oh, sorry, I thought it was like a really really good movie, and I'm intrigued to watch more of a. Is it Chan Wook Park or Park Chan Wook? I never know, but it's some good stuff.
Yeah, no, he's obviously a good director, and I'm sorry if I've you know kind of pissed off anyone who's watching. I give it a low rating. Um, just know I did like it. Just I guess if I'm just giving an objective score, it's 5, but it's definitely not. There are aspects of the film that are like an 8 or a 9 for sure. But yeah.
Especially the acting.
Oh yeah, the acting's like definitely up there. It's fantastically acted, and there are some fantastic action set pieces and themes, and that's what I really get out of it for sure.
All right, do you want to move on to our next movie?
Yeah, sure. So our next movie is it's a bit more mysterious and cipher filled. It's it's Under the Silver Lake, directed by David Robert Mitchell. Um, and just I'll just give a rundown of the plot. Um, Sam is basically an LA nobody. He basically just spends his days just sitting around, and it's never really made clear what his job is. But regardless, he meets this girl, um, this blonde-haired girl, who he kind of makes an acquaintance with, and after they meet, the next day she disappears and leaves without a trace. So roughly, the film follows him trying to find her and what that search leads to. So yeah, that's how I'd summarize it. Mm.
So I know you've seen this like 3 times, so
Yeah.
I'll let you kind of launch into what you think because I'm still kind of processing it even at, like a week after I've seen it.
Yeah, so the first time I saw it was actually in theaters, and I remember liking it. I had a lot of problems with it. Um, Second time I watched it, I thought it was significantly better. Still had some of those same problems, but overall enjoyed it much more. The third time, while there are still maybe traces of like little problems here and there, I think I'm starting to really think it's like one of the best films of the decade, for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've only seen it once. I should probably watch it again. But it is pretty long. Not that I felt it necessarily. It was really entertaining, but yeah, it was like I'm kind of with you on your second viewing. I thought it was really good, but there were some problems that were like, okay, like I feel really bad for this movie though because of all the stupid distribution stuff.
84, no, God,
Yeah,
damn.
like I mean I love A24, but like they really botched it with this one. It was just it was really sad to see this movie just go to waste like that.
Yeah, and they're not great with overseas distribution, like The Lighthouse, Uncut Gems, and other films like they don't come over to like the UK and Australia until like either earlier this year or late this year. So distribution's all over the place. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like they kind of need to get their management in check, but regardless, it doesn't really have an effect on the overall quality of the movie for me. I mean,
Oh no, none whatsoever. No.
personally, I enjoy watching movies in the comfort of my own home more than I do in the theaters, even if in the theaters you might be able to concentrate better. I feel like it's much more comfortable to watch it at home and at your own leisure. And I was pretty interested in watching this movie. I've been for a while, and finally watching it, I was really impressed with a lot of how it went about telling a story. And I've heard people say,
Yeah,
it goes nowhere, and I'm like, no, it goes somewhere. It goes somewhere completely wacky and absurd and completely in line with the rest of the movie. And I thought it was such a fun movie in spite of some of its
mm.
darker moments.
I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but I think this is one of the most beautiful films ever made. Not just in terms of cinematography and technical, but because in terms of the story arc of the main character. And I love how this is a total making fun of like pop culture obsessives and people who spend all day on at home or on computers and stuff like that. Because I feel like I relate to certain aspects of that, but this film, absolutely through the course of the runtime, just kind of roasts that demographic, and and it I'll towards the end it does have a bit of sympathy towards the main character. So that makes it such a beautiful arc for me in towards the end. And I'll get more into that when we start spoilers and stuff. But yeah.
Yeah, I remember you saying at the end of the last episode, you were like, I don't know if you'll like the main character. And watching it with an eye towards the main character, I was like, this is not a good person, but I'm enjoying just watching him. Andrew Garfield is absolutely hilarious in this movie. Just watching
Oh yeah, he's fantastic.
all
Yeah.
the faces he makes is just they're perfect. Watching his shock at every twist and turn, it was just priceless.
Yeah, it's if I think he should get an Oscar just based on the faces he makes in this movie. Like the most expressive actors in terms of like the amount of like even when he's just walking through a party or just a random scene, he'll just make a random face, and I'm like, you didn't have to do that, but it just adds so much to the character. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I love how everything is just motivated by sex. Like he's just this person
Oh
who's
yeah.
like just driven by it and like he'll just, he wouldn't I don't think he would have chased after this girl had it not been that he had interest in her. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought that was just a really nice, character. Just it was a good way of developing the character, and it tells you a lot
Yeah.
about him. And like just even by just the things that are in his room and everything, it's just you can totally tell what type of person he is, and every single bit of dialogue he has just further characterizes him. And it was just really fun to watch him, even if he was not a good person. He was really funny to watch.
Yeah, and what you said plays into there are some scenes where women will be barking like dogs, and that could seem confusing. I didn't really get it until I really thought about it. All the women like dogs, a woman he doesn't get to have sex with. So the girl in the pool he didn't get to have sex with. The girls in the bathroom who bark at him, they're kind of portrayed as like some feminist, like really women, and it's they bark like dogs. So in his mind, he can't lower their self-esteem because he can't fuck them, and I think that's a very um important and very kind of deep thing that you wouldn't realize until you really think of it. And there's a lot of aspects like that in this movie that I appreciate.
Yeah, like my main problem with the movie is like there are things that I didn't think were like themes that really never came back into play by the end, but I kind of
Hmm.
appreciated it in a way because it kind of, showed like a lot of these, a lot of the theories that this guy's and a lot of the other conspiracy theorists he meets along the way are like talking about, they're stupid. They have no substance, and you
Mm.
know the actual truth is so much more ridiculous and silly and oddly plausible. It just it was a really well made satire. I think it's great.
I think, yeah, I think the fact that some of the themes and threads don't add up is a part of the point in a way, because this character is totally blindsided and thinks everything has meaning and stuff like that. And I think to a certain extent, some things in the film are imagined by the main character, and I don't think everything is entirely real. Uh, so, um, especially with the dog killer and some of the people he talks with at the party, I do think some of it's imagined to a point, and then towards the end, without giving all this yet, when he comes to the realization and kind of solves the mystery per se, it's a wake up call, kind of. It kind of puts things in perspective for him, and the film kind of does slow down at that point, I think, and I think that was intentional to like kind of symbolize that his mind's starting to clear up. Yeah.
In spite of it slowing down, though, I don't think it was ever boring. This is one of the most entertaining movies you can watch. Even despite its long length, it was just constantly engaging.
Yeah, like they're always throwing something at you. And when I say slow down, I don't mean like the pacing. I just mean um, the imagery and the set pieces and the way scenes are placed. It gets a lot more elongated, but in like a good way, because I
Hmm.
think it really reflects the mind state of the character.
Yeah, I
Mm.
feel like towards the end he kind of comes to terms with and accepts the fact that not everything has to have meaning, as not to be too spoilery, but like as with the parrot, he's like, what is he saying? And the lady's just like, I don't know. It's just, oh,
Mm.
okay, not everything has to have a meaning. And, he accepts that, and he's just like, okay, well, I guess that's that.
Yeah, and I think that's why the end's so important, because the parrot was never supposed to say anything. It was just supposed to symbolize the end, which was, you you don't have, not everything in life can be understood, and there can be beauty in that. And sometimes you just got to take the good with the bad and kind of move on, and just take what you want out of it, but you won't necessarily find the answers all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of it that was just. I've seen people call this like a drama or a thriller, and I mean, it is, aspects are thrilling, but I thought it was kind of like a mystery comedy in a lot of ways,
Mm.
because like I didn't take a lot of it seriously, because although like a lot of the mystery was interesting, the way it's presented is so kind of wacky and satirical that I just had a ton of fun with this movie, and especially with Andrew Garfield. It was such a fun time.
Yeah, it's like above all, I think it's so entertaining, and each scene drips so much personality and intrigue. I love the party scenes, like the set design and how it progresses through them. Like I love when he just walks down streets and you see like cars, and I actually like that this was shot on digital, because it kind of gives a plasticity or a certain feel to it that I don't think film would have replicated the same way. Um, so I don't know. I saw some people complaining it was shot in digital, but I don't know. I think it's fine all the way it was shot. It's
Yeah,
very creative.
I think that looks really nice, and like even like I, I've seen people call this like misogynistic, and I think every single thing in this movie is viewed through the lens of the main character, and even if the movie doesn't really support him or condone his actions, I feel like the
Mm.
way like a lot of it is in his mind, and um I feel like that perspective is just really interesting, and it's very fun to just watch this really colorful and weird character just, you know,
Yeah.
just you know, make himself happy.
Yeah, I think the biggest indicator that you're not supposed to necessarily think like condone his actions is when Topher Grace's character and him are on the computer, and they get the drone to look in on this woman in her bedroom, and when it zooms up on her, you can see she's crying, and I think that kind of sort of symbolizes to a point that yes, these women are people too, and they have feelings, and you can't just trivialize their experience or sexualize them. Like they're people too. Like that's what I got out of that anyway.
Yeah, and I feel like some of the characters that he supposedly has relationships with, I feel like some of them are imagined. Because like there are scenes
Mm.
that are like super one-sided. It feels like fake, like all in his imagination.
Yeah, and in reference to your point, I think that first woman he meets with in the start of the film, like kind of like the one who does the auditions, like the actress girl.
Yeah,
Like I don't, I'm not sure if she's real or not, but I definitely think she's not. I definitely lean towards like she's not real because um if you notice that when she says like I'll come back when you stop when it stops smelling when the place stops smelling, she never does, which kind of implies that it stays stinky, and um that that I think that kind of supports the fact that um she might not be real, because realistically how would she not come back? Like wouldn't she check up on him or something like that? Like I think she's kind of imagined, or at least partly. Like, it's a bit hard to tell, but yeah.
yeah, like a lot of scenes in this movie. I'm not sure if they're real or just in his imagination, but I feel like a lot of it is just him reading into things too much, and it's really entertaining to
Hmm.
watch him do that.
Yeah, and I think the whole overall mission statement in this film is like I don't think this film intends you to like analyze its ciphers. I think it's making fun of people who do that, and that's why I think the subreddit of this film is kind of a joke in a way, in that they're kind of doing what the film was making fun of. Like, I don't know if that's just me, but
But at the same time, it's an absolute treasure trove of like that, because of all the subliminal things that happen. And like I feel like it mocks it to a degree, but also celebrates it because it is, you know, kind of like that. It's a movie that, you know, it's made for these people who just have to deconstruct every single little detail in a work. And
mm.
it was a really interesting movie, and I actually kind of want to watch it again.
No, yeah, I think it's a movie you get so much more out of the second viewing, um, even if you do know the result of the mystery, because I feel like there's one of those films where the mystery is important, but it's not like the be all end all into like appreciating the film, knowing the twists and turns. I think there's so much happening below the surface that it's just so rich and will give you so much on repeated viewings. And I took so much notes on the third viewing because and it was very good experience, because you just when you're analytical about stuff, you just notice so many little things that they pepper throughout the film, and yeah, it's great.
Yeah, and like I don't know, it was just like this, some of the ideas in the movie. Like I don't want to. Do we get into spoilers?
Yeah, we may as well. Yeah.
All right, spoilers. The character of the songwriter I thought was one of the best ideas in the movie, and then that never really comes back into play. And I thought that was just
Hmm.
hilarious because it's like it just led him into a dead end. He's like, "Oh wait, what? That's what happened?" And so he just, graphically murders this person, and then he just, he's like, "Well, back to our main mystery."
See, I think it works in that fashion too, and I found it hilarious in that way. But I also think the songwriter is the first sign that someone is telling him that what he's doing is like pointless, and he should stop now before it really hurts, and you know um kind of makes him shatter his perspective. So I think I wrote a note saying um, like songwriter kind of symbolizes his aspirations crumbling before him, and destroying him with the guitar is like a denial of these ideas, and that I'm not going to listen to you. I'm going to keep on my drunken, not drunken, but kind of like
Stoned
abstract
state.
rage. So yeah, stone state of trying to find out this mystery and stuff like that. Because the stuff he says to him is really like defamatory, and like you can't do this, and I wrote all these songs, and it's very much in line with he's trying to send him a message of trying to get him to stop doing these things, but obviously he just rejects it and basically kills that guy, essentially.
Yeah, and I feel like I feel like the end result of all of his, you know, research and reading into everything is something that, is like, wait, what? It's like I feel like it's plausible in a way, and it's also really funny, and
Yeah,
it fit in perfectly with the rest of the movie, and once he kind of accepts that, he becomes a much better person.
yeah, and him like kind of sleeping with that older woman who owns the parrot is kind of a breaking down of him seeing women in a more pure light and not focusing on. It's obviously sex driven of course, but it's a more mature and reserved type, which I kind of appreciated for like how they decided to kind of tell the character's arc. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I thought a lot of the way the women were treated in this movie. I understand some people's complaints of it feeling exploitative, but um, and it is misogynistic to a degree, but that's because everything is in the eyes of the main character, and especially with a lot of the people like a lot of the girls he meets at like parties being revealed to be like prostitutes. I think a lot of that is just his imagination running wild, being like, "Oh, what if this happened?" And like
Yeah,
maybe like his songwriter, like him killing the songwriter, was all a dream. Maybe like it was all just him going down these crazy paths of like
yeah,
imagination, and the in actuality, when he's actually solving this, he's just like, wait, oh, that's it? Like, it's like that quote from Avengers Infinity War from Thanos. Reality is often disappointing.
yeah. No, I think that's very true, and I think that the balloon girl he meets, I don't think she's real. The ginger head girl, I don't. She might be real in one scene, like when he goes to the movie. I think that was an actual person he met, but I think he imagined the whole prostitute and like her leading him to the mansion thing. I think that was imagined.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
feel like all of the women is just, you know, like in his dreams he's, having sex and everything, and they all have romantic feelings for him, but in actuality they're these barking dogs to him, because, he just doesn't want to hear, what they actually have to say, and
Oh yeah.
it's a really interesting juxtaposition, and I feel like it's something that kind of goes underlooked in like critiques of this movie that I've read.
Yeah, I think anyone who says this movie is like exploitive or sexist, I don't think they're really thinking about, you know, some of the symbolism or how the movie actually kind of sympathizes with women throughout the film. If you really like think about how it juxtaposes with the main character, especially in the dog barking scenes, as you mentioned. I think that's a very big indicator. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like this movie is almost anti-men, or at least anti this like very certain stereotype.
Yeah, it's not anti-men, but I think it's more just it's anti a certain type of man, like a certain. It's definitely certain aspects, certain individuals within the gender, but not necessarily as a collective. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting exploration of like I feel like he just made like the writer just said, okay, this main character is going to be like the stereotypical stoner, like lazy millennial who spends all his time like trying to deconstruct things that don't even have meaning, and doesn't actually do any meaningful work. I thought they just took that to the most extreme lengths possible, and I thought like a lot of that over the top attitude just really lended to the atmosphere and the presentation of the movie, and it just created a really nice, smooth blend of comedy and mystery.
Yeah, and the fact that, they do, it's a satire, of course, but the character is also quite funny and quite memorable, and, you do sympathize with him, especially towards the end. So I think he's not just a blank canvas for like satire. I think he's a person as well, and they took extra effort to make sure he's an actual character and actually had some semblance of like, you know, arc and meaning to it. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought a lot of like in spite of him being a kind of a bad person, he's misogynistic and he beats up some like 12-year-olds at one point in the movie. Which I was
Yeah.
like, whoa, like that's a bit much. I mean, I understand you're mad, but like these are kids. Um, but
Mm.
um, like I still felt sorry for him when he was like, I, I guess we're in spoilers now, so getting kicked out of
Mhm.
his apartment and like having to walk everywhere because his car is done, and having this one girl who he's actually interested in, you know, be gone, and I thought it was just a really interesting, you know, I don't want to say it's sympathetic because to an extent it kind of mocks his behavior, but like
Yeah.
it's a very nuanced portrayal of him, and in spite of everything, I
Mm.
feel like he's very funny and I don't want to say likable because he does do some really stupid and awful things, but
Yeah, I
he's
wouldn't go far to say likable. I wouldn't say likable either, but yeah.
he's a fun and interesting character to watch. I will put it that way.
Yeah, and I think most of my sympathy comes from him in terms of when he goes to that hut later in the film, and he finally gets to talk to her and have that phone conversation, and just you can see his face gradually just get more and more despondent and depressed, and it kind of like even though he did likable things like assault those kids and just various other things throughout the movie, it kind of makes you feel like he was kind of on that wasn't really something that defined him necessarily. It was just something that was a product of his very mentally damaging behavior. And when he found that out, it kind of shattered that behavior. So that's what makes me have a bit of sympathy for him, and the fact that I feel like he kind of does come to a certain clarity with himself towards the end. Yeah.
Honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like that scene where he beats up those kids might be another figment of his imagination. Like he wants to do that, but he knows he can't. And you know, it's like I
Mm.
feel like a lot of things in this movie are you know things he's imagining, just indulging in, and like something I thought about is like most of the time he's wandering around at night, so maybe he actually does have work and he's just imagining a lot of these things. And maybe he doesn't, maybe he's just a slacker millennial, but I feel like a lot of it just might be because of this hyperactive ADHD imagination that the film very much delves into.
Yeah, and that's very true. Like I think it's very interesting that the audience has the choice to say if this if what's imagined or what's real and stuff like that. And I definitely think that scene with the kids is definitely supports more imagined because there's no repercussions for it, and it definitely seems like it's only a one-time thing. So it seems like something he would have imagined or in his sleep or whatever. And it's very true. Most of the time, it's in the nighttime when he's wandering around. There are some daytime ones, but I think it's usually in the afternoon and whatnot. So I think it's very smart that they don't ever reveal his job because it makes it a bit more muddled on what exactly he does. And if they revealed it, then it would have made the film more obvious and clear.
Yeah, and like I really want to know what David Robert Mitchell's intent for this movie was. And I know he's never going to give it away because that's the fun of the movie and the mystery of it. But, it's just like
Mm.
how much of this is just his imagination like going down these really long rabbit trails only to find out that, what's actually happening is like kind of lame and he's like, "Wait, what?"
Mm.
you know?
Yeah, and kind of off topic, but playing into that, I think that when he meets the balloon girl in the underground, they play an REM song that he really likes. What's the frequency, Kenneth? And um, it's with this girl. And then when he starts to feel sick and goes to the bathroom, she disappears. And I think I don't. That's the biggest support for me that he imagined her because um, I think that he was just dancing by himself, and the image that he got of her from the party the previous night before, he kind of had in this other situation, and um, I I think it's very typical for people to kind of forget about their troubles when they're just dancing to a song they really like, and I think it kind of plays into that for sure. Mm.
Yeah, like a lot of this is coming into perspective for me once I now that we're talking about it and now that I'm thinking about it more. This is actually kind of brilliant. Like I'm really getting a lot of out of this. Like I feel like I really need to rewatch it and like look at all the dead ends that it goes down because I was like, wow, this is like I'm gonna just write down all the dead ends that he runs into to just see what the actual path he goes down. Like it's like a choose your own adventure book or something, it's like it's gonna lead down all these different paths, but only one of them is going to get you to the end of the book. And
Mm.
oftentimes it's like, oh wait, what? That's kind of disappointing at the end of those books when at least that's what I remember when I was, reading them as an 8-year old. But it was like all of all of these scenes are just coming together for me, and I honestly this might be like a work of genius. Like now that I'm thinking about it.
Mm. Yeah, it really comes up at you when you start considering what the film might be saying and all the subtext and stuff. And the fact that it's just an entertaining, crazy movie as well. You don't even have to think about, the deepness. If you just watch this as a straight like noir or, just crazy, then it would still work. And that's I think that's what's the genius of it is that you can take what you want, but I think it's a very smart, brilliant movie. Yeah.
Yeah, I think honestly I'm really excited
Mm.
to rewatch it now because now having all this in mind, I think I'll catch a lot more. And
Mm.
it's a really inviting movie to revisit because of how much David Robert Mitchell crammed into the story, and it was so impressive. Just even as a feat of
Yeah.
filmmaking, it's really, really well acted, really well shot. Well, I don't want to say well edited. I'll get into that in a second, but like just from a technical standpoint, like a lot of what they were able to accomplish with this budget, especially as like with an indie studio like A24, like distributing it and everything, it's really an impressive feat, and all the special effects that
Yeah.
they did use looked absolutely amazing. So
Oh yeah, it's absolutely fantastic in my opinion. Uh, just one more before we maybe move on to your editing thing. Um, I just wanted to say that like um, the guy he meets with, who wrote the Under the Silver Lake magazine, is actually from Mulholland Drive. Like he's the same actor, and he plays like a similar role, like this really frantic, um, kind of crazy conspiracy guy. Because in Mulholland Drive, he's kind of this guy who talks about a dream he had, and it kind of calls back to that type of character. And yeah, and I do think he's kind of representative of like if Sam keeps going the way he does, what he'll end up when he's older, kind of. Yeah.
yeah, and then you see his household boarded up in the end. You're like, oh wow. And I
Yeah.
think he was killed by his own theory. Like that's what killed
Mm.
him. His imagination went too far. This is really really neat. Like
Mm.
I'm kind of geeking out right now. It's like this is really good.
Yeah. Like I don't think the owl's kiss is like an actual thing. I think it's more just it's what happens when your conspiracies just eat you up and kind of just make you just so distorted to a point where you know sometimes you might just lose yourself entirely, and it might be an actual thing. I don't know, but I do think it's more it symbolizes more like you losing your entire self to like being a pop culture obsessive for sure.
Yeah, and like I do want to mention I don't know how off topic it is, but the way those scenes with Owl's Kisses are presented is great because there's no music, it's super quiet, and it's like just the way it's really creepy, honestly. Like those were some of the
Oh yeah.
most intense moments for me.
And I do think he got some of that from his previous film It Follows in terms of how he decided to execute those scenes. But I just love the style of it and how it's executed and like the yeah, it's just very effective. It's creepy, but not to like a funny extent. It's actually genuinely like especially the first time you watch it, you're just like, it's really striking. Yeah.
Yeah. Back to what you were saying about Mulholland Drive. I'm actually like I've heard a lot of comparisons about them, except Mulholland Drive is supposedly much more serious. I'm probably gonna
Mm.
watch it really soon. So
They're very different movies, is I think. They have different goals, but I do think that aspect of the film was definitely a homage to Mulholland Drive, and in terms of the themes of that film. So especially with that character. So I thought it was just good to end it that bit.
Interesting.
Mm,
But anyhow,
yeah.
my big problem with this movie, I mean, I initially I was like, I have two big problems. One was like subplots that go nowhere, and now I realize that that's the exact point of it, and I actually like that creative decision. The editing is the other one, and the editing for the most part was like, I heard some people like, Taylor J. Williams on Letterboxd was like, I feel like Andrew Garfield, but instead of trying to find out what happened to Sarah, I'm trying to find out what had happened in the editing room, which I laughed really hard at. But I don't think it
Mm.
was like that distracting for most of it, but there were
Mm.
some scenes that were kind of choppy and feel like could have been done better. It wasn't horrible, but there were
Uh,
scenes that were kind of distracting for me.
um, that wasn't a problem for me at all. I didn't really notice that. Um, there was maybe one point where he's running in the graveyard and it does like this warp effect on the film, which I thought looked kind of bad. But other than that,
That
but
that
I thought it was
was
fine.
that was the one I was most distracted by, but other
Yeah.
than that, most of it was kind of it was okay. It wasn't like super special editing, but it was fine. Did what it needed to do.
Yeah. I didn't. That didn't bother me, and that one scene only lasts for like 5 seconds, so it really does not affect anything. But it was just a little thing that kind of just.
It's not like
But
high life levels of bad editing.
yeah, I thought you would have really liked High Life because I saw your day. Because but like I, that's another movie where like I saw and I just didn't really get like what where the high praise was coming from. Yeah.
Man, I thought I would like High Life too, and I was watching it like, what the heck? Like, it's like, why? Like, all of it was like, there was nothing to be gained from it being presented non-linearly, and I don't know. That's a different discussion. I,
Yeah,
I,
for
I
another
was I
time.
was very disappointed in High Life, but
Yeah. Well, I saw it in theater and my friends liked it, but I felt like the odd one out because I didn't really like it as much as they did. Um, but I know Claire Denis is a filmmaker that I haven't really gained like appreciation for yet. So
like she's like a director I hear her name thrown around a lot, but she really doesn't have a movie that I know her for. Like she's not like one of the directors that a lot of people love that like has a definitive movie. She has a lot of movies, and most people are like, yeah, she's great, and I'm like, where do I start? And they're like, I don't know.
mm, yeah, she's. I'm definitely in the camp of like I appreciate what she does, but I'm not sure if I'm in love with what she does. You know.
Yeah, I've only seen
But
High Life, so there's definitely some room there, but as it stands, I wasn't really that big on High Life, unfortunately. So
mm, yeah, maybe we can go into that in the Q&A maybe a little bit. Yeah. Back into Under the Silver Lake. Um, yeah. I guess I thought it was very technically well done, apart from that one thing. But yeah, I don't know. You're talking to someone that really loves the movie, so take that with a grain of salt. But yeah.
so is that about it? Do you have anything else to add?
Uh, I mean, I could talk about more like specific symbolist stuff, but I think that's more something that I thought how I interpret it, and I feel like this is a movie you get out most out of it when you just watch it and form your own opinions and what it all could symbolize or mean. I think that's the beauty of it, really.
Maybe I'll do an analysis of it sometime. I'll definitely need to rewatch it soon. But yeah,
Mm.
as it stands for me, it's a 9 right now, but it could easily be a 10 in the future,
I've given this film a 10. It's absolutely fantastic. Yeah.
which is surprising considering you don't have that many 10s, but this is one of them.
No. Yeah, I was surprised too. I think sometimes, you know, it didn't feel right giving it a 9. It felt like something I had to give a 10. And usually 10s are a very emotional based rating for me, but I do emotionally relate to some of it, but for the most part, I don't have that connection with it. So it was just a 10 based off the amount of craft and stuff I liked, and it exactly appeals to me, so I guess there's no reason not to give it a 10. So,
See, for
yeah.
me, a 10 is like, well, like the best that this certain genre has to offer. Like Office Space is one of my very favorite comedies, so I give that a 10. Mean Girls is my favorite teen movie, I give that a 10. Like, like are they comparable to like 2001 or something? Not really, but they're
Mm.
just the best in the category for me.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough, but 9 is usually like that indicator for me, maybe, or just something I really enjoy. But 10 is very much a personal rating. Like I know some people treat 10 as like, oh, just like a really fantastic made movie or best of the genre like you do, but it's definitely a bit more of a personal rating.
I mean, yeah, that's fair. I don't like people who just go like, there's no such thing as a 10 or something like that. Like people who are
Mm.
just like totally skimp out on tens, and I'm like, no, there are movies out there that you should give a 10. I mean, I guess that's pretty subjective, but I mean, like, I feel like if you love a movie, so much, you shouldn't give it an 8 or something. You should give it like 5 stars or something. You should really proclaim
Yeah.
your love for this movie instead of just be like, oh, it was really good, 3 stars because I have a really strict ratings curve.
No, yeah, some people are really picky with their ratings, and that really kind of pisses me off. Um, I don't view ratings that way, especially like a 5-star rating. That being emotional for me, everything below that usually has. It's either a problem thing if I rate it lower, or it's just like it doesn't emotionally resonate with me enough, or it doesn't appeal to me to like give a high rating or a 10 or whatever like that. But yeah, I don't like people who think of ratings that way. Basically, it's like they watch too many YMS videos and miss the point entirely of his rating system.
Yeah. Should we go on to some questions since we've already kind of moved on from ratings?
Yeah, sure. Um, I guess this question's not in line with what we just talked about, but I was wondering, are there any actors that um, everyone else likes, but you've never really gotten why they're so acclaimed, and you either think they're okay or bad?
Jude Law, I think is just really annoying. I don't get him.
Jude Law. I haven't seen a lot of his stuff or his stuff he's in. I don't from memory, so I don't can't really say. But um, he's okay. I don't think he's like fantastic, but he's okay. Um, I don't really like Marlon Brando that much, apart from in The Godfather. Everything else I've seen him in is kind of underwhelming.
I've only seen him in The Godfather and Apocalypse Now, and he's easily the best part of The Godfather, and he was also excellent in Apocalypse Now. So I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen enough of his movies to really say, oh, he's kind of overrated. But because the stuff I've seen him in, he's excellent. But you know,
Oh no, like the stuff when he's older is fine, but when he was younger, he's kind of overrated. People still like praise him when he was younger, and I don't really see the hype. Um, like Streetcar Called Desire and the Wild One. I watched a good chunk of the Wild One, and yeah, I didn't really like his acting in that. And Streetcar Called Desire, I've only seen some bits of it, so I can't really make a full judgment. But same thing applied, so I don't know.
interesting. Like a lot of old actors don't bug me, because it's a different time. But occasionally there's an actor or an actress that are just like, why were these people considered good? You know?
Yeah, I don't know. It comes down to taste, but at the same time, like when you're removed from the hype and the acclaim, you're only left with your own thoughts, and you're just like, really, is this really what got acclaimed? And I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not super experienced in older movies, unfortunately, but um, yeah, like there are certain clips of movies I've seen, especially with like Marilyn Monroe, where I'm like, why is she an icon? She's a horrible actress.
Yeah, I don't think she's like a great actress or anything. She's competent, but I don't think she's awful, but she's competent, but I don't see her as like the fantastic actress. When people think of Marilyn Monroe, they think of the icon and the beauty of it. They're not necessarily thinking about her acting ability. But yeah.
Yeah, I feel like Marilyn Monroe is one of those actresses who just plays one character, and that reminds me of another person who I think is overrated, Michael Caine. Um, uh, you know,
Yes.
he is
Yeah, I
all
agree. Yeah.
he is a exposition character, like especially in all the Christopher Nolan movies and Children of Men. He's like exposition in like this really obnoxious, severe British accent, like the saliva that must be coming out of his mouth when he's recording all of his lines. It's just it must be insane because like you can barely translate it because it's like I don't know, his accent just bugs me, and all of his characters are just like, it's there they're there for exposition and nothing else. Which is
Yeah.
why The Prestige is my favorite Christopher Nolan movies because Michael Caine is in that movie, but I feel like his exposition, you know, is more like needed and not like ham-fisted and like just kind of shoved in there and spoon-feedy. Like
Mm.
I feel like his character actually has a purpose. But there are movies like Interstellar and especially Children of Men. It's just the worst. And I haven't seen a lot of his older movies, so I can't really say he's really fallen off or anything. But he's definitely not as good as he was.
Yeah. I think age can have a, or like how old or how young you are can have a reflection of how you act or how you handle material. Um, some get better as they go older, some get worse, and some stay consistent. It just depends on the actor or actress, you know. Um, yeah. But um, I think that's all I have for that. I can't necessarily, nothing else comes to mind. But
This
um,
isn't really actor specific because I know all of these actors and actresses do good stuff, but the first three Star Wars movies are horribly acted. I feel like I'm in the minority on this one, but most of the acting is just
uh,
awful, especially from Mark Hamill, who's a good actor in most stuff, and I like him, but not in those movies.
see, I don't think the acting's the most well done in those movies, but I view those movies as like cheesy sci-fi films. So like the acting kind of plays into that. So I don't think it's fantastic. There are some like good acting moments in Star Wars films, like particularly in Empire Strikes Back and maybe towards the end of Return of the Jedi for sure. But as an overall, looking at all first three films, they're not that they're not that greatly acted. I think actually the recent films have been the best acted so far.
Yeah, I mean, they're much better than the prequels, at least.
Yeah. Yeah, I honestly don't get people who defend the prequels but hate on the new films. It makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's been ages since I saw them, so I might have to rewatch them, but I don't
Mm.
know why people defend them. I mean, I kind of get Revenge of the Sith. It's at least kind of fun, but the first two, like, yikes.
They're so long and like they're so not only the acting but also the dialogue and the plot. It's just like it just does not interest me and like it just rubs me the wrong way half the time. Yeah.
Did you see on Twitter a while ago YMS was like posted a video of him watching it with like described audio for the hearing impaired? It was
Yes.
it was hilarious. It was just
No, he
amazing.
said like that made it so much better for him just watching the audio descriptive. Um, that's what he said on Sardonicast, and I saw a bit of that as well. So
Yeah, like I kind of wanted to like go back to those, like especially the Phantom Menace with all of Jar Jar's stuff, and just listen to it that way, because it would just be amazing.
yeah, no, I think that would be a fantastically hilarious experience. You wouldn't even need to watch like like a kind of hilarious commentary. You just need the audio description. That's fantastic. Love it.
Yeah, and
Hmm.
that's kind of given me inspiration. Like, what else can I watch that has like really weird names for everything? I'm like, oh, I know, I could watch like Spirited Away or something.
Yeah, I wonder what that film's like with audio description. That'd be kind of interesting.
Be like, you know, Chihiro runs up to the door and I don't know. This is bad, but like,
Yeah,
no, no. Yubaba pull
yeah. Let's
through.
just be like, because they name all the characters, even ones that are like incidental, and their names don't get mentioned. So that's why it's funny, I guess.
Untitled character says something.
It's like who's untitled character? Such a good name for a character. Very creative.
Good times.
Yeah, good times.
I think we pretty well answered that question.
Yeah, I think so. Do you have a question?
Sure. Uh, Let me think.
Drum roll.
Since we're already kind of on the topic, do you have a director that you consider like overrated?
Uh, well, as I mentioned, Claire Denis is definitely one which I don't necessarily see like the praise for. Uh, um, John Trevorrow. Um, Popular consensus usually likes his stuff, especially Chef, but I've never really seen why his films are considered like good. Um, there's definitely some others, but I'll definitely have to like um, look at some of my ratings to like kind of figure out which ones are kind of like overhyped or whatever. um, yeah.
I don't I can't really think of specific directors that I think are overrated because it's hard because they almost all directors have like one movie I like. Jon Favreau is, like you mentioned, I think really overrated, but I haven't seen Chef, which is considered to be his best work, which apparently you hate, but which just kind of scared me off from watching it. But like I'm more like I think series are overrated more than like directors particularly. Like I think Star Wars is overrated. Like I don't get what the big deal is. Like they're fun, cheesy sci-fi movies. I don't get why everybody takes them so seriously.
Actually, I think George Lucas might be an overrated director because yes, he's made some good films like American Graffiti and Empire Strikes Back. Oh no, he didn't direct that, but he was involved. But um, regardless, I think he's more of a director that he has so many talented people working around him that, or a good script that his direction will get elevated. But when he's left to his own, his films just fail on every level.
Yeah, like oh, there's one. Francis Ford Coppola. I love Apocalypse Now. The Godfather is overrated. You heard it here first, folks. It stinks. I don't like it. Um,
This is this is where the Diabolicast title comes into play. Very diabolical hot takes. Yes.
yeah, like everybody's like, "Oh, The Godfather, it's the best movie ever," and they're just like whacking off to it, and I'm like, it's like, why? Why is this like so beloved? Like, Marlon Brando is good, but like, I don't know. I have a review of it. It's really long. It dives into everything. It's on
Yeah, it's
Letterboxd.
pretty good.
Oh,
It's pretty
thanks.
good.
Um,
Yeah.
but other than the Apocalypse Now, he directed the other two Godfather movies, which I haven't seen yet, and like Jack, like the Robin Williams movie, and like he's directed some really weird things.
Yeah, he's directed some weird stuff. Like, like he'll do some really respected, critically acclaimed films like Apocalypse Now or The Godfather, I guess. But then he'll come up with Jack or some other weird film. It's like, where did this come from? What the hell? It's like, I don't know. I
Yeah,
think he just sometimes I think he just makes movies for his kids to enjoy. I don't think he really cares about the audience. It's like, oh, my son or my daughter wants a film, so I guess I'm gonna make Jack now. You
yeah.
know?
I don't remember whether it was Antonio Banderas or Robert Rodriguez who said it about Spy Kids, but they were like, a lot of people don't like these movies, but you know, my kids love them, and that's who they're made for, and you know, as of late, it's become a cop out, with stuff like A Wrinkle in Time and stuff. That's
Mm.
that's a, that's a whole different debate. I haven't seen it. I don't want to, but Taylor J. Williams actually has a great video on it. But um,
Oh
uh,
yeah.
like like I totally get. I sympathize. I think Antonio Banderas said it. But like I sympathize with him because like Spy Kids like are fun movies for children, and they don't really talk down to that audience at all, and adults can enjoy them.
Mhm.
As a cynical teenager, I think all of them are hilarious. Um, but except for the last one was just bad. But like I can't really fault it for doing what it does. It's just a lot of the
Yeah.
CGI is horrible.
I do think Robert Rodriguez is definitely a little overrated. Like, 'cause most acclaimed movies I think are fine or like decent. You know.
I haven't
Um.
seen any of his movies other than the Spy Kids movie.
These are the only ones that are worth watching. Like, let's be honest. Um, but at the end of the day, um, Planet Terror was directed by him, and apparently that's really bad.
Oh, right, right. I did see Planet Terror. It's so forgettably awful, you know. And
Yeah,
now that I'm thinking about it, I still hate it. So, yeah, I don't like Robert Rodriguez. He's overrated.
like apparently Sin City is good, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah,
From Dusk Till Dawn is like really entertaining. That's the only film like I really like by him. But Alita Battle Angel I didn't like. So yeah, he's kind of overrated.
yeah. His best movies are supposed to be like Sin City and From Dusk Till Dawn, like you mentioned, and I do have some interest in seeing them, but like as a whole, a lot of his movies are supposed to be, just kind of okay, fine. They have kind of a niche audience, and I don't really
Yeah.
know that I'm a part of that audience.
I think From Dusk Till Dawn has actually a good Tarantino performance, like acting performance. I think he acts good in that one. So yeah.
Most of Tarantino's performances that I've seen is just an excuse for him to say an N word, the N word. So it's nice to hear that he's actually doing stuff that's actually not kind of racist.
Well, yeah, because he plays like a character that's supposed to be a bit mentally disturbed and a bit, it's supposed to be a bit like a bit crazy. So like it really plays to his acting style a lot, and I think that's why it's a good performance because it totally fits the character well. And yeah.
I thought it
Mm.
was pretty good in Reservoir Dogs too, even if he was a bit
Oh
forgettable.
yeah, sorry. No, I forgot. No, I was forgetting about that. Yeah, I thought he did good in that too. And I don't think he's as bad in Pulp Fiction as everyone says he is. Like, it's clear that his character is supposed to be some kind of really like neurotic kind of like annoying. Like that's kind of how he's written. So I don't think it's bad. I just think he's definitely not the best by any means. You know, but I think he does good with what he wrote for himself. I think. Yeah.
Yeah, he's an okay actor, but I think he's a better director.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
That
Yeah, his acting work definitely is pales in comparison to his directing work for sure.
yeah. Um, did you want to ask one last question?
Yeah, because you mentioned it, what are some of your favorite YouTuber or online film critics like you mentioned Taylor J. Williams and stuff like that?
Um, Oof, that's a pretty loaded question. Um, Here, let me.
Nostalgia critic, I love nostalgia critic. Oh, I love him.
uh,
I love the wall. I hate the. No,
like I used to love him when I was like 12, but I've outgrown him, and especially since like the controversy came out. Like, oh wait, yeah, let's not support that.
well, just while you're thinking, I guess I'll sound off some of mine. Um, I think Taylor J. Williams is one of the best. I think he's really articulate with his points, and he's he doesn't feel patronizing to me. He feels very down to earth, and you feel like you have a conversation with him. Like his stuff. Uh, I do like Carsten Runquist. He's very wholesome, very genuine, generally pretty agreeable, and even if you disagree, you get where he's coming from. And I guess
Yeah.
bigger ones like I Hate Everything and etc.
All right, let's see. Alphabetical. Let's see. I Where does critics go? Um,
Oh, and Ralph the Movie Maker. I do really like Ralph the Movie.
See, like
Yeah.
the thing with Ralph the Movie Maker is, I love watching his videos, but like almost everything he's recommended to me, like and and like a bunch of his favorite movies have been like, oh, I don't like this very much. Um,
Yeah.
like especially with like Brazil and Ran or Ron, I believe it's Ron. I was just like, what? Like, I don't get it. I do need to rewatch Brazil pretty soon though. So um uh
Yeah, I kind of feel that way, but I still need to watch Brazil, but
Channel Cruisewell. Um is one of my favorite video essayists. Deep Cuts, as far as music goes.
Oh yeah. I've watched a bit of his stuff. He talks about some really cool albums.
Yeah, I really love his artist retrospectives. He does give a lot of insight into like you know albums and how they're made and like the background and greater context as to view them. Let's
Mm.
see. Uh, I suppose this is another video essay channel, but every frame of painting is always good. Uh,
Oh yeah.
I,
Mm.
I, I love the needle drop, which is kind of a meme these days, but I do.
He's
Um,
a good critic. He has good insights, and yeah, I get a lot out of his, what he says. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
Like
Although he didn't have to say the N word 50 times in one of his videos, though. That was
I
uncalled for.
I hate all those jokes. I hate his comment section so much. It's this so annoying.
It's just repetitive. It's just like it was only funny like the first time. It just gets tired after a
Yeah.
while.
Like you mentioned,
Um,
Carson Rehnquist, I really like. Occasionally, I feel like he's a bit full of himself, but he
I think that's only because he's a film student and he's in that point in his life where he's kind of not full of himself per se, but just he feels really a self of importance from studying film, and that can kind of rub up in the way he kind of appreciates and views film. I think. Yeah.
yeah, I think he's really entertaining in spite of any you know pretension he might have. Lindsay Ellis definitely makes really
Oh yeah, she's a
good
great
videos.
essayist. Yeah. Although I disagree with a lot of what she says. But, yeah.
Really? How so?
Um, just her when she does musicals and stuff like that, I usually disagree with her takes, depending on what the musical is and or what the film is. I like her I like her more like general topic ones. Those are fantastic. I usually agree with. But it's more just when she specifically talks about like a movie or something like that. I disagree.
Although
Hmm.
you gotta admit that Beauty and the Beast takedown was amazing. I mean, whew.
No, that one was the exception. Like I agree with that one. That was fine. It's more like when she does like I don't know. She did Phantom of the Paradise and some other ones, which I really disagree with. Like
You
she
did
picks
Phantom of
like
the
the most.
Paradise?
I believe she did on the musical Hell thing. Yeah,
Interesting.
was she? Yeah. But she'll take like the most insignificant, most like stuff that doesn't really matter in terms of like the overall film, and kind of just blows it up to this proportion. It's just like I don't know.
Is it like
And,
ARTV or something? Or someone
um,
who just like
it's not that bad.
okay, okay.
Yeah. Hey guys, welcome to ARTV. This album is a 4 out of 5.
I saw he gave like the last Blink 182 album like a 9, and I could not stop laughing at that. Like it was just hilarious, like
The stuff
why?
he praises is just like so stupid. Like I don't know, the stuff he praises is just like why?
It's
It's
like
like
a critically acclaimed album will come out and like then he reviews it and I'm like, he's like, "Get away from here, normie." I feel like I'm like fending him
hmm.
off with my pitchfork. Like, get off my lawn.
Yeah, I don't understand. He'll give a 3 out of 5 to like some critically acclaimed album, but some like album that no one cares about, he'll give a 9.
This daughter's album is way too abrasive. 2.5 out of 5. And then I'll give like a Blink 182 album like a 9 out of 10 or something. Um,
I don't get it. It's experimental. Doesn't mean it's good, man. It's like
I,
that's
I,
not why people like it. It's like
it's like when
um,
a film bro tries to review like Midsummer or something. Like I had a good time like a few months ago. I was just like laughing at a bunch of people being like, "Oh, I don't get it."
yeah. I mean, I don't think that film's perfect or anything, but some people just don't are just criticizing either things in the wrong places or just don't get it. Like, let's be fair.
Yeah. Nerd Writer, I enjoy. Is a really good video on a serious man. Um, he's a or she is a Patricia Taxon now. Makes really good videos about um A variety of things, um, and also
Mm.
really good music. Um,
Yeah, I think I might have seen a bit of that, a little bit of that stuff. Yeah,
yeah.
ages ago.
Um,
Uh,
he did.
there's a lot.
Oh,
Hmm.
go ahead.
No, I was just saying there's so much to choose from. It's hard to know where to start. But like, yeah, like you have your video essay. It's like polyphonic or you know, Volksgeist or something that do more music stuff. There's so much variety. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you mentioned, Ralph the Movie Maker. I love Red Letter Media. Um,
Oh yeah.
I know that's kind of the popular choice, but I don't know. Like I used to be like, oh, I don't get them, and then I actually watched one of their videos, and I started really enjoying their content. Um,
Yeah, they're half in the bag, and best of the worst are like my favorites when they do this one.
have you seen the video they did where they watched the first three Transformers movies at the same time?
Oh no, I haven't. No.
It's hilarious.
That just wouldn't make any. It'd just be like I don't know, listening to all the songs at the time. It'd just be like, whoa. It's like I don't know. It's funny though. Oh, I should watch it.
Let's see. Um, Lagging. Taylor J. Williams, like you mentioned, the double agent really needs to get back to reviewing too.
Yeah. Uh, of course, I imagine YMS is one for you. I imagine.
Oh yeah, I'm just looking at this alphabetically, so it would kind of be the last one on here, but yeah, he's definitely one of my favorites. And Todd in the Shadows, I do think his optimism about modern pop music is a bit much, but I understand a little.
Mm.
People love pop music, and so I'm like, yeah, whatever. And I think like especially his one hit wonderlands are really well made.
Oh yeah, like there are songs that I wouldn't even consider. Like he talks about, I'm like, okay. Like he did one on the Hustle recently, and I'm like, oh, you know what? I'll check this out. And it's good for that type of thing.
Yeah, there are songs that I wouldn't have even known about until I, watched this video because they were so lost to time. Like, I didn't know about Informer by Snow until I watched his video, and I don't know, that's like the most hilarious song. I don't know,
It's
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 one.
hilarious, isn't it? I can't hate it because it's just so funny.
Exactly, exactly.
It's like I don't care if it was intentional or not. It's just funny regardless.
Yeah. Did you have anybody else you wanted to mention?
um, the there was one that came to mind, but it quickly slipped out. I do. Uh, oh, what's he? I mentioned Hi I Hate She before, but um, I think there's Alex Myers. I think his name is. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he'll do TV shows and movies and stuff, and it's a very casual. It's not too analytical or anything, but it's just entertaining. Yeah, I think he's good.
I don't know that I've seen any of his videos, but I'll have to check him out. Yeah.
Yeah, he did one recently for that Netflix film Tall Girl, and I was just watching a bit of that, and it makes you realize like how much crap is put on Netflix. Yeah.
Yeah, to this day I have not seen a Netflix original movie, and to be honest, I don't really have much interest in watching Netflix original movies because I've heard most of them are awful.
Some of them are okay to good. It's just a lot of them are crap, like Swiped, which is an awful, awful movie.
And see,
Yeah,
that's the
edited.
majority of what I see get put on there, so I've kind of been scared off.
It's like how not to make a movie like in a movie. Like it's like a tutorial, but it's not supposed to be. It's very strange. Hmm.
They always blow up on the internet too. Like people are like, "Oh, this is so bad."
Yeah, but I don't think it should get any attention in like a idealistic world, because then it just gives more excitement for these filmmakers to keep going, because so many people are watching them and reacting, and I don't know.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's not really anything we can do about it. But
No, not really. But I guess it's fun to trash talk movies that are bad. Don't get me wrong, but it goes a bit far to a point.
yeah, I watched the David uh the David Lynch movie. I feel horrible saying this. I can't believe he directed it, but Dune. I watched that. I watched that with my dad the other day, and we had a glorious time making fun of it. But it was one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life.
Really?
Holy cow! Like I don't get why that has like cult classic status now. It's horrible. Like some people are like, "Oh, it's not Lynch's worst movie." I'm like, in what universe? Like, I haven't seen all of his movies yet, but like I doubt the like four or so I have remaining. Actually, no, I think it's just three. I don't know. Point is, they can't be worse than Dune. Dune is one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. Like,
No,
holy cow.
yeah, I might check it out somewhere down the line, but at the same time, I wonder if people are just giving like a 6 or a 5 just based on the fact that it's Lynch, or if they actually do think it's that quality. But yeah.
I went on optimistic because Dune might be my favorite book. It's one of them. I love them. I love the. I've only read the first two, but I love those. Um, I read the second one twice. The first one is super long though, so that's off
Mhm.
topic though. The point is, I love Dune and I love David Lynch, so I'm like, oh, what could go wrong? And then I watch it and I'm like, oh,
This is Dune.
yeah, just watch any scene. Like, just go on YouTube or something and look up just scenes from Dune. Like, especially the dream sequences. Like, if you could, and like the end with the kid. Holy cow! I don't want to like spoil Dune or anything, but there's some stuff in there that's absolutely hilarious. So it's fun for a laugh. Just don't pay anything for it, please.
Yeah, I I won't. If I do end up watching the full thing, I'll try to get maybe a streamable version or maybe a free version if I can. But yeah,
Good times or bad times, as the case for Dune maybe.
bad bad times at the L Lynch.
Unfortunately, like I've
Yeah.
seen that he greatly regrets directing it, and I'm like, yeah, I get why.
It's like I hope Carl McLaughlin was at least somewhat salvageable in terms of the movie because he's generally a good actor.
No, I love Kyle MacLachlan, but he was garbage. Like, holy cow, he was
Mm,
so miscast. It was so sad.
yeah. Well, like, um, Showgirls probably is a better movie because he does a way better performance in that. So yeah.
Yeah, his best role will forever be Dale Cooper in Twin Peaks. Um,
Oh yeah. No, he perfectly picked that character. Like what I've seen of the show, he definitely fits the role so well. Mm.
uh, gotta love Dale Cooper.
Oh yeah. I still have to watch more of it. Been busy, but yeah, I'll definitely watch more of Twin Peaks.
Oh, definitely.
Hmm. Yeah. Mm. So is that it? Anything else you wanted to touch upon?
I think that's about it.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks for listening to today's episode of Diabolicast. We talked about Oldboy and Under the Silver Lake. Um, I believe Oldboy you can stream on YouTube Movies if you're willing to rent it, or you can buy DVD or stream it on any other platform you use. Under the Silver Lake's on Amazon, I believe, and YouTube Movies as well. So if you want to check that out, it's up there. Our links will be in the description for Twitter, Letterboxd, etc. Um, yeah, discussion.
All right, about ready to recommend a movie?
Yeah. Um, I was. I hope I'm not getting the title wrong, but it's it's. I think it's called My Own Private Idaho. I think it is. I've been meaning to check that out for a while.
Let's see. I don't know if I have access to it, but I'll see what I can do. Of course, next week
Um.
is the first week of October, so I thought I would start recommending some horror movies. Um,
Yeah. Do you want me to change it to a horror movie? I can. If you want to keep in line with the thing.
Unfortunately, I don't. think I have access to it. My own private Idaho. So I'm sorry.
Um, we won't do it now, but just be listeners. We might change the film
Yeah, because I do have interest in
later down
seeing
the
it.
line. Yeah, for sure. But we'll yeah, it might change by next episode, but yeah, we'll see. Mm.
Anyhow,
All
did you
right.
have a backup or anything?
Um, sorry, I'm trying to think. That's all I have. Um,
Sorry for putting you on the spot. I just
oh, it's all good. Um, well, I've been meaning to see if you want a horror movie, the Omen. The
Oh yeah,
Omen might be a good one. Yeah.
the Gregory Peck version.
Uh, I was thinking the one directed by Richard Donner. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
that is the
Gregory
version.
Peck. Yeah, Gregory Peck. Yeah.
All right, cool. And I'm going to recommend the uh 2007 remake of the original by the same director. It's kind of complicated. Funny Games by Michael Haneke or Haneke. I don't know how to say his name, but yeah, fun
Oh,
times.
okay, cool. I've been meaning to see that for a while. Yeah.
Me too. So
Okay, cool.
yeah.
Yeah. We'll maybe I'll I'll watch The Omen and Funny Games as well. We'll probably change to The Omen, but yeah, just keep that in mind for next week. Yeah.
All right. So about
Yeah.
about it.
All right. See you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.